Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's see if we can reach 1,000 likes on this one. Dropping a like helps ensure more people see the content, but it also just lets me know I'm doing a good job. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated. I post content just like this all of the time. Sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, enjoy the 2 hours of uninterrupted horror stories right after the ad break after this intro. There won't be any more ad breaks after that one. And as always, I hope you all have a great night. There were 4 children queuing to go down the water slide. "Wait," I said, showing my palm to a little girl with pink goggles. A squeal burst through her lips as she waited for the red light to go green. "Just wait there," I repeated, watching the kid who'd gone before get spat into the pool below. "Okay, sitting up or lying on your back. Don't go head first." The girl skipped forward and sat shaking with excitement in front of the jets that poured water down the lazy coil of the slide, over the yawning mouth of the covered plastic chute. A sign emphasizes that this slide is not by any stretch of the imagination for thrill seekers. "Take it easy on the Zambezi." The light went green, and before I could say anything, the girl scooted herself over the lip, down the slide, and around the bend, the shrill warble of her scream making me wince. "Next," I said, massaging the area around my right ear. A little boy with a streak of dried snot below both nostrils waddled forwards, and on my signal, he gripped the bar, hurled himself into the chute, and flipped onto his belly. "Turn over," I said, but it was too late. I stood up to see him plunge into the pool in a graceless backward sprawl. The lifeguard down on poolside gave me a thumbs up, letting me know he was uninjured, and I let my gaze linger for a moment as she pulled her heel up onto the chair with 2 manicured hands. Turning back around, I lectured the penultimate child in the queue, a pale girl with hair so blonde it was almost white. "Don't do that, okay? Sitting up or lying on your back only. I'm not trying to be a killjoy. I'm trying to keep you safe. That's my job." The girl's eyes never met mine. Instead, she looked into the shadows of the Zambezi, which are made thick and soupy by the color of the plastic, an opaque brown. One day, no doubt in a drab, gray office somewhere, a waterslide designer passed over a host of bright and marvelous colors, only to choose brown. Nothing screams fun like brown, right? "Are you ready?" I asked the pale girl, but her eyes seemed far away, like she was sleepwalking. There was no fidgeting, no giggling, no cheekiness even. She looked duty-bound to go down the slide. With one serene push, she entered the chute, gliding around the bend. I waited for her to pop out at the bottom, using the opportunity to look at the lifeguard again. Her tanned skin, her air of indifference. Something about the new lifeguard was magnetic to me, bewitching. She met my eye, frowned, looked away, glanced up again, curled her lip in disgust. "What?" she mouthed. I was staring at her. "Stop staring. Stop it." Has the girl left the slide yet?" I shouted down, but the lifeguard didn't hear me. I scanned the empty splash zone. Had the girl landed and climbed out while I'd been gawking at my colleague? Surely I hadn't been distracted for that long. I checked the cameras only to see a steady stream of water rushing down along the bottom of the chute. The girl was nowhere to be seen. "Can I go yet?" asked the boy who was last in line. "Yeah, I suppose," I said, distracted and in disbelief. The boy went down the slide, and I tracked his progress on the cameras all the way to the bottom. He climbed out of the pool and trotted towards the changing rooms as the lifeguard climbed down from her perch. I'd half expected him to plow into the girl on his way down, but he showed no sign of his trip on the slide being anything other than routine. I shut down the camera feed and the water jets from the control panel. I locked the gate behind me and set about hosing plasters and hairballs into gutters by the walkway. With everything squared away, I switched off the lights, but a sound prevented me from heading out to the foyer. A thud from inside the Zambezi. "Hello?" I said, my voice echoing across the tops of folding chairs in the viewing gallery to the back wall some 80 meters distant. All I heard was the steady dripping of a tap, a sound very much in the realm of the ordinary at the swimming pool. That thud, however, was not. I strode along the poolside, taking care not to slip, especially because it was pitch dark. The only illumination came from the fire exit signs above the door. A grim scenario entered my mind where I'd fall, bang my head and slide unconscious into the water beneath the pool cover. Even if I came to my senses, I'd have to struggle fully clothed against its smothering weight. "Hello? Anyone there?" I called out from the bottom of the stairs leading up to the Zambezi's mouth. No reply. But that creaking thud had to be her, right? I'd seen that little girl go down the slide. I swear I had. I unlocked the gate and climbed up, crouching at the entrance to the slide itself, listening to a faint pulsing, a quiet heaving. It was the sound of a dying man breathing through a respirator at the opposite end of the hospital corridor. Slow, weak, helpless. The thought of a scared girl somehow trapped in the slide made me step forward into its now dry throat. It was a squeeze, but I could just about navigate my way around the bend. Here, I truly left the light behind. All focus now switched to what I could hear. My footsteps knocked hollow against plastic as I groped forwards, and my breathing quickened. I started sweating. A fingernail from the cold hand of claustrophobia tickled my neck. My eyes bulged in their sockets. As I began to question what I was doing, I heard it. A voice, soft and song-like, echoed all around me. "Have you come to rescue me?" Yes, I have. Where are you?" "Why did you come?" "Because it's my job. Now, come on. Let's get you out of here and back to your grown-up." "And you wouldn't have come if it wasn't your duty?" "No, I would've." "Liar," shouted the voice, suddenly venomous. The slide tremored in tandem with the outburst, and I fell back onto my haunches in shock. It didn't feel like I was talking to a little girl anymore, but when the voice spoke again, it was once more a songbird. "I like you." Thanks." "Do you like me?" "Yes." "We're friends, then." "I suppose." One of the best things about friendship is the gifts friends give each other. I love gifts. There was no obvious response I could conjure in that moment, but despite the pressing darkness, I felt watched, perceived, and there was something expectant about that regard. I reached into the pockets of my shorts and rummaged for a half-empty pack of chewing gum. I held it out in front of me on a flat palm. "You can have this if you like." The tiny packet was snatched from me and replaced with a different item. "Thank you. And it's freely offered, this gift?" "Of course. Have you given me a gift too?" I said, gulping. The voice was chewing now. "Oh, that, yeah. Give it to that lifeguard you want to screw. It's an exact replica of the yellow tulip on the front of the diary she writes in every night." Blushing, my hand closed around the stem, and I felt my way up to the petals. The thing in the slide with me was most definitely not a child, and nobody knew I wanted to do that apart from me. But that wasn't the only thing I wanted. I'm not like other guys. "You don't need to breathe like a hunted thing, friend. She's repulsed by you anyway." "Repulsed?" "Most everyone is. You're a jot above worthless." I thought back to the ugly look the lifeguard had given me when I'd stared at her. Was it true? "What are you?" She doesn't want to screw you. La la la. She doesn't want to screw you, sang the voice. And I don't want to screw her, but you didn't answer my question. Oh, so what do you want to do with her? Nothing so grandiose and treacherous as love her, I hope. I bit my lip. You didn't answer my question, I said after a moment. What do you believe I am? A scared little girl? No, I thought you were, but now... The Zambezi creaked again. The source of the sound was somewhere ahead of me. A rush of warm air wafted against my face, as the breathing I'd heard as I entered the slide returned. It was louder now, closer, hungrier. Do you believe I'm real? The mouth that spoke those words couldn't have been more than an inch from the tip of my nose. Its pitch had deepened, but behind the menace I sensed a vulnerability. It was as though the thing needed my validation to exist. Smelling its hot, putrid breath, and hearing the plastic groan as whatever was in the chute with me moved around, I very much believed it was real, and I almost said so. Almost. No, I came in here to help a little girl I thought was stuck. It seems I was mistaken, but I'm going to keep searching anyway. 30 long seconds went by. A minute, 2. I'll help you, the voice said, and the creaking in the slide advanced towards me. No, I'll be fine. Thanks, I squeaked as the presence barged through and past me and out the top of the slide. The air inside the chute cooled. The charge in the air dissipated. My goosebumps settled. And then I heard a quick buzz followed by a swishing, sloshing sound. I screamed as my feet were swept from under me, and the back of my head crashed against the bottom of the chute. I felt myself sliding around and around and around until the bottom of the Zambezi was no longer flush to my back. I was airborne for a split second, and then I was underwater for an eternity, submerged in the splash zone with my trainers, somehow higher than my head. I fought to right myself, twisting around. I felt the sting of water rushing into my nostrils and realized I was facing the surface, pushing off the pool floor with one foot. I opened my lungs to receive a full breath, but only managed to fill them with chlorinated water as the pool cover battled me back down. Underwater I retched, swallowed more water, and forced my eyes open in search of the side of the pool. If I could get there, I could pull myself out at the edge of the cover. But where was it? Splotches danced across my vision to the tune of a throbbing ring in my ears, growing in volume with every heartbeat. Time was running out. I couldn't see any walls and was about to pick a direction blindly before I realized what I could see, the dim outline of tiles beneath my feet. I swiveled in a frantic circle and spotted a tile, half cracked and half chipped where countless children had planted their feet after the Zambezi ejected them. From here, I knew the wall was somewhere to my right. I darted for it and erupted through that small gap between the pool cover and the walkway, spluttering and dragging in what air I could. Panting and drenched, I hauled myself up and sprinted headlong out of there, not bothering to lock the doors to the center behind me. A rushed, yet wise decision, I think. It will give whatever is in there a chance to leave, if it hasn't already. With shaking hands, I went to dig my car keys out of my pockets and shrieked. Something was in my hand. I'd been unknowingly clutching it ever since the encounter in the slide. The tulip. I snapped the stem, threw it down on the gravel, scraped the sole of my shoe over the pedals, and flattened it with the wheels of my car as I drove away. Look, I'm not going to give you any real names because we did some pretty sketchy stuff out there in the desert. But you can call me Jay, and that's close enough for government work. You know what I mean? First thing you gotta understand about me is I hate the heat. I mean hate it. Can't stand the sun beating down on you like some angry god trying to melt your brain into soup. And I'm never, ever going back to the Southwest. Not for all the green chili and hatch. Not for all the silver and the sandias. Not for nothing. See, I still get these nightmares, man. They come when the sun's getting low and turning all orange and nasty. When those clouds light up like cotton candy at some twisted carnival. In these dreams, I'm back out there sweating bullets. And there's these things, dark things, deep underground in the desert. And the heat's like molten lead pouring over everything. I wake up drenched in sweat, even when it's snowing outside my apartment here in Portland. But back in 2005, when I was 19 and thought I was hot crap, dude, I thought nothing bad could ever happen to me. Had that bravado that comes with being young and stupid, you know? Thought I was invincible. Thought the world owed me something just for showing up. I was living in a town in New Mexico. Not gonna say which one. Safer that way. And I was couch surfing, staying with some shady people, and doing whatever odd jobs I could find to keep myself in ramen and weed money. See, I'd been on the outs with my parents since I came out to them the year before. Told them straight up, look, I'm not super picky. Sometimes I like hot dudes. Sometimes I like hot chicks. Real diplomatic like that. My folks, completely flipped out. Started going on about sin and hell and how I was gonna burn for eternity. You'd think I had told them I was gonna become a serial killer or something. So they kicked me out when I turned 18, and there I was, just being young and dumb in the high desert, hanging with my friends, getting blazed, thinking I had all the time in the world to get my life together. The heat was always there, pressing down on you like a weight, making everything shimmer and dance in the distance. But I figured I'd adapt, you know? Figured I'd grow into it like a lizard or something. I was zonked most of the time anyway, so the heat just felt like part of the haze. Plus, I was 19 and immortal, right? What could go wrong? Man, if I could go back in time and slap some sense into that kid. But everybody thinks that, you know? So I'm living this hand-to-mouth existence, right? Doing landscaping one day, helping someone move the next. Whatever kept me in gas money and munchies. But the work was drying up faster than spit on a sidewalk in July, and I was getting desperate. That's when my dealer, let's call him Miguel, told me he knew a guy who had some work. Under the table stuff, good money, no questions asked. It's like manual labor, Miguel said, passing me this gnarly joint. But it pays cash, and it pays good. I was blazed enough to think this sounded legit, so I said, sure, hook me up. The meeting was at this rundown diner on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like it was filtered through dirty gym socks, and the pie looks older than the waitress. I headed in around 2 in the afternoon, sweating through my shirt after walking across town. The guy was sitting in a back booth, and dude, he was off. Like, seriously off. Skin pale as a fish belly, which was trippy as hell because everyone out here gets burnt to leather just walking to their mailbox. His eyes were this pale blue, so light they were almost white, like looking into winter ice. But his hair was jet black, slicked back with so much pomade, it looked like an oil spill. You must be the young man Miguel recommended. He said in a voice that sounded like it came from the bottom of a well. No accent I could place, just flat. He tells me you work well. Keep your mouth shut, and don't make waves. Yeah, that's me, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. The vinyl was cracked and sticky, and I could feel my thighs already starting to sweat against it. What kind of work are we talking about? He leaned forward, and I swear the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Desert work, manual labor. You and a small crew will drive out to a remote location, spend one night camping, complete a job, and return. The pay is $10,000. My brain practically short-circuited. 10 grand for one night of work? I was making maybe $300 a week when I was lucky. This job had more red flags than a Chinese parade, but for 10 grand, I was in. What's the catch? I asked because I wasn't totally stupid. No catch. Just hard work in difficult conditions. You'll need to be prepared for the heat. His pale eyes fixed on mine, and I felt like a bug under a microscope. Can you handle the heat? The way he said it made my skin crawl, but for $10,000? Man, that was like hitting the lottery. Yeah, I can handle anything. I lied. He slid a business card across the table. It was blank except for an address. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. And just like that, he stood up and walked out, leaving me sitting there wondering what the hell I'd just signed up for. The next morning I walked up to his warehouse on the industrial side of town, the kind of place that looks abandoned but has too many fresh tire tracks in the dirt to actually be empty. The sun was already making the asphalt shimmer, and it wasn't even 8 o'clock yet. There was a white box truck parked outside, and 3 other guys standing around looking about as confused as I felt. This is some serious hardware, said this stocky Hispanic dude with tattoos covering his forearms. He stuck out his hand. Pedro. Jay, I said, shaking it. His grip was solid, calloused from real work. The other Hispanic guy introduced himself as Xavier, a quiet type with intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything. Then there was Red, who had that weathered look of someone who'd spent his whole life under the desert sun. Native features, but I had no idea which tribe. And finally Kate, who I could tell right away was the Jeffa, the boss lady. Short, built like a fire hydrant, with arms that looked like she could bench press a Honda. Alright, listen up, Kate said, ticking off items on a clipboard. It's a 3-hour drive to the site. We're packing food, water, and camping gear because we're staying overnight. This is serious business, not some weekend camping trip. Anyone who can't handle that needs to walk away now. Nobody walked. Good, now load up. She started directing us to load the equipment into the back. Winch, sledge, coils of rope thick as my wrist, pulleys, camping gear, enough water jugs to fill a swimming pool. We riding in the back of the truck too? I asked. No, in the stretch limo we're renting. Of course in the truck. This isn't a pleasure cruise, she replied curtly. The drive was brutal, man. Kate drove while the rest of us sweated in the back like sardines in a can. No AC, just the tiny hatch from the front propped open. The hot air blowing through like a hairdryer set to hell. I kept chugging water and watching the landscape get more and more alien as we headed further from civilization. Every so often, Kate would pick up the CB radio and say something in code. Blue jay to eagle's nest, checking in, or cactus flower is clear. Always got a response in the same cryptic BS. Made my paranoid stoner brain start spinning all kinds of theories about what we were really doing out here. Where exactly are we going? I asked Pedro, who was sitting across from me, mopping sweat off his forehead with a bandana. Way out near the lava fields, he said. Near the Malpais, you know. There are dead volcanoes out there on the border. I didn't know that either until today. Xavier looked up from where he'd been staring at the equipment. Volcanic activity stopped maybe 3,000 years ago. Left behind all these lava tubes and formations. Perfect place to hide things. Hide what? I asked, but he just shrugged. Red spoke up for the first time, his voice quiet and gravelly. People get killed on digs like this, but money talks louder than common sense. That should have been my first real warning, but I was 19 and stupid, and already counting my 10 grand in my head. The heat was making me dizzy, and I just wanted to get wherever we were going so I could get out of that rolling oven and into some shade. We pulled up to the site around 10 in the morning, and I have to say, it was like landing on Mars. Nothing but black volcanic rock stretching to the horizon, twisted into weird shapes by ancient fires. The heat hit us like a physical thing when we opened the truck doors, and I immediately started sweating harder than I ever had in my life. "Set up camp in the shade of that outcropping," Kate ordered, pointing to some rocks that cast maybe 6 feet of shadow. "And drink water constantly. I don't want anybody dropping from heat stroke." I started joking around with Pedro and Xavier, trying to lighten the mood, but Kate shut that down fast. "Stow that away and get focused," she snapped. "This is serious business. People have died out here for being careless." Something in her tone made my blood run cold despite the heat. This wasn't just about moving some rocks or digging holes. This was something else entirely. And I was about to find out what. After we set up camp, and I use that term loosely because it was basically just throwing our sleeping bags in the only patch of shade we could find, Kate gathered around us and started handing out gear: heavy work gloves, headlamps, and more water bottles. "We're going about 200 yards that way," she said, pointing towards what looked like absolutely nothing, just more twisted black rock under the merciless sun. "There's a hidden canyon in the lava fields. You'd walk right past it and never see it if you didn't know it was there." She was right. We trudged through the heat for a few minutes, sweat pouring off us like we were melting, and I was starting to think she was leading us to our deaths when suddenly the ground just opened up. 1 second, we're walking on solid volcanic rock. The next, there's this crack in the earth, maybe 6 feet wide, with boulders and overhangs, creating natural cover. "Whoa," Pedro muttered, peering down into the darkness. "How the hell did anyone find this place?" Kate went down first, then called up for us to follow. The canyon was maybe 30 feet deep, and the second I hit bottom, the temperature dropped at least 15 degrees. It was still hot as blazes, but compared to the surface, it felt like walking into air conditioning. "This way," Kate said, leading us toward what looked like a crack in the canyon wall. As we got closer, I realized it was actually the mouth of a cave, a lava tube, probably formed when molten rock flowed through here thousands of years ago. Xavier was running his hands along the entrance. "This isn't natural," he said quietly. "Someone carved this wider. Look at the tool marks." He was right. The edges of the opening had been chiseled and smoothened, widened from whatever natural formation had been there originally. "Spanish colonists," Kate said, switching on her headlamp. "We're here to dig up some artifacts they left behind." And that's when it hit me what we were really doing out here. "Oh," I said, the reality sinking in through my heat-addled brain. "We're grave robbers, aren't we?" Kate shrugged. "Call it archaeological recovery, but yeah, basically. You got a problem with that?" I thought about the 10 grand waiting for me and shook my head. Nah, man. Dead Spanish dudes don't need their stuff anymore, right? I've worked a couple of sites where people get hurt doing exactly this kind of off-books digging, Red said, looking at me with a serious gaze. "We need to be careful." We headed into the lava tube, our headlamps cutting through absolute darkness. The cave opened up into a section that was wider than I expected, maybe 40 feet across, with a sandy floor and a massive stone ceiling that disappeared into black above our lights. The walls were rough volcanic rock, but they'd been carved out in places, smoothened and shaped by human hands. "Start digging here," Kate said, pointing to a spot in the center of the cave floor where the sand looked different. Darker, more compacted. We dug for 2 hours in that sweltering underground oven, taking turns with the shovels and chugging water like our lives depended on it. Which, looking back, they probably did. Pedro was the first to hit something solid. "Got something," he called out, scraping sand away with his hands. "Big something." What we uncovered made my blood run cold despite the heat. It was a sarcophagus. Stone, about 6 feet long, 2 feet wide, a foot or so deep. but it wasn't like any Spanish artifact I'd ever seen in museums or textbooks. This thing was weird. The stone was some kind of dark volcanic rock, almost black, covered in carvings that hurt to look at. Not Spanish writing or crosses or anything Christian. These were symbols that seemed to twist and writhe in the light of our headlamps. Geometric patterns that made your eyes water if you stared too long. "That don't look Spanish to me," Xavier said, echoing my thoughts. Spanish colonists found a lot of indigenous artifacts, Kate said, but even she sounded uncertain. "Probably Anasazi or Pueblo. Pre-Columbian." Red was standing at the edge of our excavation, staring down at the sarcophagus with a curious expression. "That's not Anasazi," he said quietly. "That's not Pueblo. That's not anything from any tribe I know." The thing felt wrong in every possible way. Despite being buried in sand in a cave where the temperature had to be pushing 90 degrees, the stone was cold to the touch, as if it had been sitting in a freezer, and heavy. We'd barely uncovered half of it, and already I could tell this thing weighed a ton. "How are we supposed to move this?" I asked, wiping sweat out of my eyes. "It's gotta weigh like 2,000 pounds. "That's what the winch is for," Kate said. "We rig pulleys to the ceiling, use the truck as an anchor point outside. It's gonna take all 5 of us and most of the afternoon, but we can do it." Pedro was running his hands over the carved symbols, frowning. "These markings, they're not worn down like you'd expect from something that old. It's like they were carved yesterday." "Maybe because it's so dry," Xavier said, but he didn't sound convinced. I was about to say something else when Red spoke up again, his voice barely above a whisper. "We shouldn't be doing this. This is federal jurisdiction. FBI level stuff. My brother-in-law got 2 years for it." "Too late for second thoughts," Kate said firmly. "We've got a job to do." But as we rigged the pulleys and prepared for the long haul of dragging that cursed thing out of its resting place, I couldn't shake the feeling that Red was right. The sarcophagus seemed to radiate a strange sense of dread, like it was sucking the life out of the air around it. And the symbols? God, those symbols. Even now, 20 years later, I can still see them when I close my eyes. They seem to move in my peripheral vision, shifting and changing when I wasn't looking directly at them. We should have listened to Red. We should have filled that hole back in and walked away. But we didn't. And what happened next? Well, that's when things really went to hell. It took us until sunset to get that cursed thing out of the cave and drag it to our campsite. Even with the truck and the winch, even with the pulleys and the sledge, even with all 5 of us working in shifts. It was absolutely brutal work. The sarcophagus fought us every inch of the way, like it wanted to stay buried. The ropes kept slipping, the pulleys jammed, and twice we had to re-rig the whole system when anchor points failed. By the time we had it pulled to the camp and covered with a heavy canvas tarp, we were all dead on our feet. The sun was setting behind the volcanic peaks, painting the sky the color of dried blood, and the temperature was finally starting to drop from surface of mercury to just inside an oven. "Tomorrow we drag this thing up the ramps into the truck and get the hell out of here," Kate said, cracking open a warm beer from the cooler. Even she looked wiped out, her usual fire hydrant intensity dimmed by exhaustion and heat. Pedro was already working on getting a fire started, stacking mesquite branches in a ring of volcanic rocks. "Man, I can't wait to get back to civilization," he said, striking a match. "First thing I'm gonna do is find the biggest, coldest swimming pool and just live in it for a week." "What are you gonna do with your cut, Jay?" Xavier asked, settling down on his sleeping bag and pulling off his work boots. His feet were pale and wrinkled with sweat. I was chugging my dozenth bottle of water of the day, trying to replace what felt like half my body weight lost in fluids. "Dude, I'm gonna get an apartment with an air conditioner the size of a Buick and never leave. Maybe get a little refrigerator just for beer. Live like a king in climate-controlled comfort. 10 grand goes fast, Red said quietly. He'd been even more withdrawn since we'd uncovered the sarcophagus, sitting apart from the group and staring at the tarp-covered shape like it might sprout legs and walk away. Hope it's worth pissing off the feds. Come on, hermano, Pedro said, getting the fire going properly. The flames cast dancing shadows across the black volcanic rock. This is easy money. Kate was digging through the food supplies, pulling out cans of beans and packages of hot dogs. Red, what are you going to use the money for? I'm behind on my truck payments and need it to keep working, he said. Plus my kids' meds. But he didn't continue, just sat there watching the fire. You know what I'm going to do? Xavier said, accepting a beer from Kate. I'm going to take my girl Maria to Vegas. Get a nice hotel room with a view. Eat at those fancy buffets, and maybe try my luck at the tables. She's been wanting to go forever. Vegas in summer? Pedro laughed, stabbing hot dogs with a stick to roast them over the fire. That's like trading one oven for another. Yeah, but Vegas has casinos with AC you could hang meat in, and pools, and room service. Xavier grinned. Besides, Maria looks good in a bikini. Even Kate cracked a smile at that. The mood was lighter as the sun went down and the oppressive heat finally started to ease up. The beans were bubbling in a pot over the fire, mixing with the smell of roasting hot dogs and mesquite smoke. After the brutal day we'd had, it felt almost normal. Like we were just a bunch of friends camping in the desert instead of grave robbers who just dug up something that made my skin crawl. What about you, Jeffa? I asked Kate. What's the boss lady gonna do with her cut? She was quiet for a moment, stirring the beans with a long-handled spoon. Pay off some debts, maybe take a real vacation somewhere with trees and actual grass. I haven't seen green in so long I'm starting to forget what it looks like. Where'd you grow up? Pedro asked, handing around the roasted hot dogs. Michigan, near the lakes. Used to swim in water so clear and cold, it'd shock your system. She got a distant look in her eyes. Sometimes I dream about giving in to that water, feeling it close over my head, washing all this desert dust away. So why'd you come out here to Hell's front porch? I asked, biting into my hot dog. Even camp food tasted good when you were this tired and hungry. Same reason we all did, probably. Running from something, looking for something else. Desert's a good place to disappear if you need to, she said. Red joined the conversation, accepting a plate of beans and hot dogs. I need this money. Things are tight. I have a family. They're all waiting. Waiting for what? Xavier asked. Waiting for me to get it together. He chuckled, the first bit of warmth I'd heard in his voice. The food was warm, the fire was crackling, and the temperature had dropped to something almost comfortable. The stars were coming out in the clear desert sky, more stars than you ever see in town, stretching from horizon to horizon. You know what? Kate said, leaning back against her pack and looking more relaxed than I'd seen her all day. Maybe Red's right to be cautious, but we did good work today. That thing's been sitting down there for who knows how long, and we got it out clean. No cave-ins, no injuries, no major problems. Tomorrow we load it up and drive back to civilization, and we all walk away 10 grand richer. I'll drink to that, Pedro said, raising his beer. We all clinked bottles and cans, even Red, though he still kept glancing at the tarp. The fire popped and crackled, sending sparks up into the desert night, and for a while there, it felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. Maybe we'd actually pulled this off. Maybe Red was just being paranoid. Maybe those symbols on the sarcophagus were just some old indigenous art that meant nothing more than, here lies so-and-so, may he rest in peace. Man, we were so wrong it wasn't even funny. I woke up around 3 in the morning, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not a normal desert smell like smoke or dust or mesquite. This was different, unnatural, like chemicals mixed with vomit. The second thing I noticed was the light. There was this glow coming from under the tarp covering the sarcophagus. Not bright, just a dim pulse like a dying flashlight. But the color, man, I can't even describe it properly. It wasn't red or blue or green or any color that has a name. It was the color of fever dreams and bad acid trips. The color of things that shouldn't exist. I sat up in my sleeping bag, rubbing my eyes, thinking maybe I was still dreaming. But it was real. The smell sharp enough to make me wince. The fire had died down to glowing embers, and everyone else was still asleep around the camp. Everyone except Pedro. Pedro, I whispered. His sleeping bag was empty. That's when I heard it, a grinding sound like stone scraping against stone, coming from under the tarp. Slow, deliberate, like something heavy being moved by something that didn't care about making noise. The glow under the tarp pulsed brighter, but the grinding got louder. I should have woken the others, should have grabbed Kate and shaken her awake, should have started yelling. Instead, I just sat there like an idiot, watching that impossible light seep through the canvas. Then the grinding stopped. The quiet that followed was worse than the noise. It was the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums, thick and heavy and full of waiting. Something moved in the darkness beyond our camp. Something big. Pedro? I called out louder this time. My voice cracked like I was 12 years old again. A scream answered me from somewhere out in the lava fields. High, terrified, and human. It started as Pedro's voice. I'd know that voice anywhere after spending all day working next to the guy. But it changed as it went on. Got higher. More animalistic. Like he was being torn apart while he made the sound. Then it cut off. The silence came back, and that awful smell, and that pulsing light under the tarp that hurt to look at. What the hell? Kate was sitting up now, reaching for the flashlight beside her sleeping bag. Don't, I whispered, but she was already switching it on, sweeping the beam across our campsite. The tarp had shifted, the sarcophagus was partially uncovered, and even in the dim light, I could see that the lid was open, not just cracked open, wide open, like the jaws of some stone predator. The symbols carved into the sides were glowing with that nameless color, pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat. Where's Pedro? Xavier was awake now, too, his voice tight with fear. Another scream echoed from the darkness, further away this time, definitely human at first, then dissolving into something else, something wet and broken. Red was on his feet, grabbing his boots. We need to go, right now. Go where? Kate demanded, but she was already moving, stuffing her sleeping bag into her pack. What the hell's happening? A shadow moved at the edge of our firelight, not the shadow of a person. Too tall, too wide, moving in ways that were hard to follow. The truck, Red said urgently. Get to the truck. But I couldn't move. I was staring at that open sarcophagus, at those glowing symbols, at the absolute darkness inside where something had been lying for God knows how long. The smell was getting worse, seeping into my pores, making my eyes burn, and I realized I was shaking uncontrollably. That's when I heard Xavier scream. He was trying to run toward the truck when something massive erupted from the shadows. 1 second he was there, the next he was airborne, thrashing and yelling as something huge dragged him into the dark. His screams echoed in the night, raw and getting fainter and more desperate until they turned into that same wet, animalistic bleating I'd heard from Pedro. Run, Kate yelled. Everyone run. Red was already moving, sprinting toward the truck. I tried to follow, but my legs felt like jelly, and the oppressive darkness was making it hard to think. hard to breathe. Behind me, I could hear something large moving through the camp, displacing rocks, getting closer. I stumbled after Red, tripping over volcanic debris. He had maybe a 20-foot head start when the shadow caught him. I saw it happen in my peripheral vision. This massive dark shape flowing over the ground like a liquid nightmare. Red didn't even have time to scream before it wrapped around him and yanked him sideways into the darkness. There was a wet, tearing sound, like shredding meat. Then, nothing. That got me moving faster than I'd ever moved in my life. I reached the truck just as Kate came running up from the other direction, her face a mask of terror in the starlight. She had the keys. "Get it started," I gasped, throwing myself into the passenger seat. Her hands were shaking so badly that she dropped the keys twice before getting them in the ignition. The engine turned over on the third try, headlights cutting through the darkness. "Where are they?" she whispered. "Where is everybody?" I didn't answer. Couldn't answer, because I could see shapes moving in our headlight beams. Strange shapes that shouldn't exist, and I knew exactly where everybody was. "Just go," I hissed. Kate put the truck in gear and started to drive, but we only made it about 50 yards before something slammed into the driver's side with enough force to tip us over. Then the truck slid, metal screaming against volcanic rock, before coming to rest on its side. My head cracked against the passenger window, and for a few seconds everything went sparkly and dark. When my vision cleared, Kate was hanging in her seatbelt, blood streaming from a gash on her forehead. The windshield was spiderwebbed with cracks, and something was moving outside. "Jay," she whispered. "Jay, help me get out of this belt." I tried to reach up, but my left arm wasn't working right. Probably broken. Through the cracked windshield, I could see massive shadows circling the truck, patient and deliberate. That's when the driver's side window exploded inward. Something dark and impossibly strong reached in from above through the broken glass and grabbed Kate by the shoulders. Her seatbelt snapped like tissue paper, and she started screaming as whatever had her began dragging her through the window frame, folding her like a lawn chair. "Jay," she screamed, her voice appearing in the truck's lights for just a second. Blood covered her features like a crimson mask, her eyes wide with absolute terror. "Help." Then something jerked her back into the darkness, and the screaming started in earnest, high and desperate at first, then dissolving into those same inhuman sounds of abject terror and pain I'd heard from the others. The sounds of being torn apart by something that took its time. I lay there in the overturned truck, listening to Kate die, too broken and terrified to move. The headlights were still on, pointed at crazy angles, illuminating patches of volcanic rock and shadow, and in those shadows, something moved. Something big, something hungry, something that had been waiting in the dark for thousands of years. The screaming stopped. Everything went quiet except for the tick of cooling metal and my own panicked breathing. I waited there for what felt like hours, sure that any second something was going to reach through the broken windows and drag me out to join the others. But nothing happened. The shadows moved and shifted, but they kept their distance from the truck. Maybe it had had enough for one night, or maybe it was just savoring the fear, letting me marinate in terror before the final course. I don't know why it didn't take me, but as the hours passed and the sky started to lighten, the shadows began to fade. By the time the sun came up, painting the desert in shades of gold and red that reminded me too much of that impossible light under the tarp, I was alone, completely, utterly alone. It took what felt like forever to crawl out of the truck. My left arm was definitely broken, and I was pretty sure I had a concussion, but I could walk. Sort of. I grabbed a half-empty bottle of water and stood up. I must have been in shock when I started walking towards the road, leaving behind the overturned truck, the empty campsite, and that cursed sarcophagus with its lid hanging open like a stone mouth that had finally finished feeding. I walked for 2 hours in the desert heat before a state trooper found me, half dead from dehydration and babbling about monsters in the dark. They took me to the hospital, and for the better part of a day, a pair of grim-faced detectives asked me the same questions over and over, making it clear they thought I was either high, crazy, or a murderer. I told them we'd had an accident, vehicle rollover. The others had wandered off in the dark looking for help and never came back. Search and rescue found the truck but never found any bodies. They never found the box either. Or at least they didn't say. Then, just as they were getting ready to haul me to a county jail cell, he showed up. The pale man from the diner. He walked into my hospital room wearing a crisp black suit in defiance of the desert heat. He didn't say a word to me, instead pulling the lead detective into the hallway. I saw him quietly show the detective some kind of identification in a leather wallet. The cop, who had been ready to charge me with 4 homicides, just went pale himself and nodded. A minute later, the detective came back in, told me I was free to go, and that my story of a tragic camping accident had been corroborated. He couldn't get out of the room fast enough. The pale man stepped in as the cops left, his icy blue eyes fixing on me. He tossed a roll of cash on the bed. "500 for your time," he said, voice like gravel scraped from the bottom of a well. "The job wasn't completed." "Completed?" I croaked, trying to sit up. "They're dead. They're all dead. What the hell was in that box?" He didn't blink. Risk was part of the deal. "You thought 10 grand was for a camping trip?" My mouth was dry, throat raw. "What was it? Who are you? What is this?" His expression darkened. Too many questions. He took a step toward the door. "I've got a mess to clean up," he said, quieter now, almost to himself. "And you don't want any of it landing on you." I stared at him. I was broken, confused, terrified. He paused, hand on the knob, and for the briefest second something like pity flickered across his face. "Take the money. Leave town. Don't look back. Find somewhere to go, kid. Don't think too much." Then he was gone, leaving nothing but the antiseptic stink of the hospital and the weight of everything he didn't say. I used the money to buy a Greyhound ticket to Portland, as far from the desert as I could afford to get. I never got my 10 grand, but I got something else. The knowledge that there are things in the dark places of this world that make death look like a mercy. And sometimes when the sun is setting low and orange, and those clouds are lit up like cotton candy, I still have the dreams. Dreams about symbols that glow with colors that don't exist, about blood-covered faces in the dark, and about the sounds people made when something ancient and hungry takes them. Survivor's guilt. I never went back to New Mexico. Never will. It's a hard lesson to learn, but some jobs just don't pay enough, no matter what the money looks like up front. And some things should definitely stay buried. I did a drug trial 3 months ago. I need to tell someone what happened. I keep thinking I should go to the news or find a lawyer or something, but the NDA I signed, pretty sure it's airtight. And anyway, who's going to believe me? The researchers don't. Every time I call, I get the same line. All test subjects recovered normally within 72 hours of the neutralizing agent. But I know what I know. 6 years of pain. Ever since I blew out both knees playing college ball. The doctors gave it a name. Severe bilateral patellofemoral pain syndrome with cartilage degeneration. What it meant was this. Every step felt like grinding glass. Every stair was a negotiation. Some nights I'd end up on the kitchen floor, heating pads on both knees, just rocking, crying, not even trying to stop. I tried everything: PT, cortisone, anti-inflammatories, opioids. That made me sick and constipated and almost got me hooked. The bills already bankrupted me once. I was working a desk job that barely covered rent. Forget the doctor visits. Saw the ad for a clinical trial. $2,500 for a month-long study of some revolutionary, long-acting analgesic. I called that same day. NeuroVantage was in one of those glass buildings downtown, the kind with valet parking and fake plants that probably cost more than my rent. Waiting room had leather chairs, abstract art, magazines that weren't ancient. Dr. Sarah Chen looked mid-40s, maybe, graying hair, sharp eyes. She talked like someone who didn't need you to trust her, because you already did. It's called NX47, she said, pushing a stack of papers across the desk. Synthetic compound, blocks pain signals at the cellular level. 1 injection, 4 weeks of relief. I stopped reading. 4 weeks, no pain. I didn't care what the rest said. After injection into the gluteus maximus, the compound is slowly metabolized by the liver. Most subjects report complete pain relief within 6 hours, and no adverse effects. Most subjects. I should have asked about the others. The shot was nothing. Nurse took me to a room, had me lie face down, gave me the injection. Felt like any other needle. Quick, forgettable. Dr. Chen told me to keep a daily journal documenting any effects, positive or negative, and to call immediately if I experienced anything concerning. I drove home expecting nothing to happen for hours, but somewhere on the freeway, I realized I'd been unconsciously shifting my weight in my driver's seat, trying to find a comfortable position for my knees. Then I noticed I wasn't doing it anymore. By the time I parked in my driveway, the constant, low-level ache that had been my companion for 6 years was gone. That night, 8 hours straight, first time since college. Next morning, I started the journal. Day 1, October 15th. Woke up at 7:30, no alarm, slept straight through, 8 hours. I haven't done that in years. Usually I'm up 3-4 times a night. Every time I roll over, the knees flare up. Getting out of bed felt weird. I kept bracing for it, that grinding glass feeling, but it didn't come. I walked to the kitchen, just walked. No limping, no favoring one side, no grabbing the wall. Made coffee, stood there drinking it, just stood there. I didn't realize how much I'd been shifting, leaning, adjusting until I wasn't. Tried walking around the block, made it halfway. My knees didn't hurt, but my legs felt weak, like I'd been in bed for months. I guess I've been guarding my knees so long the rest of me forgot how to move. Weird thing at lunch though. I bit my tongue. Not that hard, just one of those accidental bites. But it barely registered. No wince, no sharp jolt, just distant. Maybe I'm so focused on the pain being gone that everything else feels muted. Dr. Chen called tonight, asked how I was doing. I told her everything was perfect. She sounded pleased, said to keep documenting everything. Even positive changes can be significant data points. I didn't ask what kind of changes she meant. Day 2, October 16th. Something happened last night. I'm still shaking. Got up around 3 to pee. Half asleep, still not used to sleeping through the night. Stumbled in the dark, hit my pinky toe on the dresser. Jesus, it felt like someone crushed my whole foot with a hammer. I dropped, couldn't scream. Just these awful choking sounds while I grabbed at it. Crawled to the light switch. Thought I'd see blood. Bone. Something torn apart. But there was barely anything. Just a red dot. I sat on the bathroom floor staring at it. 20 minutes, maybe more. The pain faded, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. It felt like the worst injury I'd ever had. From stubbing my toe. My knees are still perfect, no pain at all. But that toe thing won't leave me alone. It keeps looping in my head. Something's happening. I know it. Day 3, October 17th. Called in sick today. Couldn't focus after last night. Thought maybe some fresh air would help. It was nice out, mid-70s, light breeze. I sat on the back patio for 10 minutes. Then my skin started burning. At first I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I was still shaken up, but it kept getting worse. It felt like I was under a heat lamp. It quickly moved from warm to scorching. Then it got worse. My arms, face, neck, every exposed part felt like it was pressed against a stove. I ran inside. The second I crossed the door, it stopped. I stood in the kitchen, breathing hard, trying to make sense of it. Then I realized. The sun. Normal sunlight felt like torture. I called NeuroVantage around 3. Got bounced around until someone picked up. Said she was Dr. Chen's assistant. I told her what happened. Long pause. Have you experienced any other unusual sensations? Her voice was flat, careful, like she was reading something. I told her about the toe. Another pause. Mr. Patterson, these sound like normal adjustment responses. Please continue documenting everything and call us if symptoms worsen significantly. Normal adjustment? I can't go outside. The compound affects neural pathways in complex ways. Temporary hypersensitivity isn't unusual. She sounded like she'd said it before. I asked if other people had gone through this. She said she couldn't discuss other cases. Before hanging up, she reminded me about their emergency line, if absolutely necessary. My knees still felt perfect. No pain at all. Whatever this drug is doing, it's doing exactly what they said it would. But everything else feels off. Day 4, October 18th. I'm writing this at 2:47 a.m. because I can't sleep and I need to get this down while it's still fresh. Temperature dropped tonight. Must have hit the low 50s because the heater kicked on around midnight. I was lying in bed when I heard the click of the thermostat, then the whoosh of air through the vents. The first breath of warm air hit my face and I thought I was going to die. It felt like opening an oven and sticking my head inside. The air from the vent, which is usually soft and warm, hit my skin like steam. I rolled off the bed and hit the floor gasping. My whole body felt like it was being scalded. I crawled to the hallway and shut off the thermostat. Then I lay on the bathroom tiles until the burning stopped. Took 15 minutes before I could think straight again. I checked my skin in the mirror. Nothing. No redness, no marks. Just normal skin. It felt like third-degree burns, but there was nothing. I'm sitting here now wearing 3 layers with the windows cracked open. The house is freezing, but I can't risk turning the heat back on. This isn't normal adjustment. Something's going wrong in my nervous system. The drug was supposed to block pain, but it's like it's amplifying everything else. A breeze feels like sandpaper. My sheets felt like steel wool when I tried to get back in bed. I keep thinking about the assistant's voice, the way she paused when I described it, like she was checking something, comparing symptoms to a list. I'm going to call the emergency line. I can't keep doing this. Day 5, October 19th. I'm back home. Called NeuroVantage at 4 in the morning. Got transferred 3 times before someone could schedule an emergency appointment. Dr. Chen was unavailable. They said Dr. Martinez could see me at 10. I was driving downtown when the hunger hit. Started as normal stomach rumbling. Within minutes it felt like my insides were being shredded. I pulled into a gas station, doubled over the steering wheel gasping. Thought maybe something ruptured. I stumbled into the store and grabbed the first thing I saw. Box of powdered donuts. Tore it open and started eating right there in the aisle. Clerk stared at me. I didn't care. I ate 4, fast, shoving them in until the pain stopped. He asked if I was okay. I mumbled something about low blood sugar and bought the rest of the box. Dr. Martinez was younger than Jen. Nervous. Kept asking about my pain tolerance baseline. Checked a tablet while I talked. When I told him about the heater incident, he nodded like he'd heard it before. We can administer a neutralizing compound, he said. It should counteract the NX-47 within 24 hours. The needle looked normal. Standard vaccine type. When it went in, I screamed. It felt like a red-hot poker. Pain shot up my arm and through my whole body. I started hyperventilating. Vision went black around the edges. Next thing I knew, I was on the floor. Dr. Martinez was kneeling beside me, asking if I could hear him. The effects seemed to be intensifying, he said to someone else in the room. We should document the timeline more carefully. I wanted to ask what he meant by that. Couldn't speak, just focused on breathing. It's been 6 hours since the shot. Still hypersensitive. The tags in my shirt feel like razor blades. My neighbor's dog barking makes my skin crawl. Please let this work. I can't live like this. Day 6, October 20th. The shot didn't work. Or, if it did, it's taking its sweet time about it. Everything is backwards now. Everything. Made hot chocolate this morning. First sip tasted like poison. Like licking a battery. Spit it out and dropped the mug. The mug hit my hand and broke on the floor. Should have hurt. It felt incredible. A wave of pure bliss shot up my arm. Better than any painkiller I've ever taken. Had to grab the counter to keep from falling over. The bruise is getting darker and it feels amazing every time I touch it. I can't eat. Everything tastes like ash. Water tastes like metal. But pain, oh God, pain feels like heaven. I have scratches on my arms. Don't remember making them. 3 lines on each side. They feel good. I keep catching myself trying to make more. Had to leave the kitchen because I kept staring at the broken pieces of the mug. This is sick. I know it's sick, but I can't stop thinking about it. Food is poison. Pain is pleasure. What did they do to me? Went to NeuroVanish. Couldn't wait. It's the weekend and the building was locked, but I saw movement in the windows upstairs. Banged on the door until security came down. I need Dr. Chen now. She came down 20 minutes later. Tired eyes. Overworked. She wasn't surprised. She knew. Mr. Patterson, how are you feeling? Fix this, please. Whatever you did to me, fix it. She told me to follow her upstairs. The elevator was too bright. The humming too loud. Everything was too much, but I needed answers. Her office looked different. The abstract art on the walls seemed to move when I wasn't looking straight at it. She sat behind her desk and opened a file. Thicker than I remembered. The occasional hypersensitivity phase typically lasts only 2 to 6 hours, she said. Her eyes focused on the files. Then the neural pathways begin to reorganize. What does that mean? NX-47 doesn't just block pain signals, Mr. Patterson. It alters how your nervous system processes sensory input. The initial effect is complete analgesia for the targeted pain source, but the compound continues working, remapping your entire pain response system. You knew this would happen. The inversion is temporary. In most cases, your system should return to baseline within 2 to 3 days. She closed the file. Some subjects experience profound neurological changes. The compound appears to reverse the polarity of pain and pleasure receptors in approximately 2% of test subjects. This should only last a few days. You should be able to manage. Should? Manage? I can't eat food. I can't go outside. I can't touch anything without wanting to scream or hurt myself. The cravings for self-harm are concerning, but they typically diminish as the neutralizing compound works through the system. You're talking about me like I'm a lab rat. She looked up. Mr. Patterson, you signed a comprehensive consent form acknowledging the experimental nature of NX-47. All potential side effects were disclosed. Potential side effects? You buried this in 40 pages of medical jargon. The compensation was commensurate with the risk level. I wanted to hit something. The urge was so strong I had to grip the arms of the chair. How many people have you done this to? NX-47 has shown remarkable success in eliminating chronic pain conditions. The preliminary trials have been very promising. How many, Dr. Chen? Patient confidentiality prevents me from discussing specific numbers. But there are others. Yes, there are others. What if I report this? What if I go to the FDA? Mr. Patterson, you voluntarily enrolled in an FDA-approved clinical trial. All procedures were conducted according to federal guidelines. Your signature is on every consent document. But you didn't tell me this would happen. We informed you that NX-47 was an experimental compound with unknown long-term effects. The neurological remapping was listed as a possible outcome in Section 12 of the consent documentation. I tried to remember Section 12, tried to remember reading any of it carefully, but I'd been desperate. All I saw was the promise of 4 weeks without knee pain. She stood up. Mr. Patterson, I understand you are distressed, but the compound has accomplished exactly what you hoped it would. Your chronic pain is gone. The side effects are manageable with proper support. The neutralizing agent will completely stop the side effects within the next few days. And unfortunately, the pain will return as well. I was escorted out, dejected, tired. Day 8, October 22nd. Something's happening to my perception. Colors look more intense, but also distorted. The red numbers on my alarm clock look like they're bleeding. The green light on the coffee maker pulses like a heartbeat. Sounds are unbearable. My neighbor's leaf blower sounds like a hurricane. The refrigerator hum makes my teeth ache. The mirror is the worst part. I look the same, but something's off. Like I'm seeing myself from a slight angle. Even when I'm standing straight. My eyes look darker, tired, different. I called Neurovantage to ask about visual disturbances. Same assistant answered. Put me on hold for 5 minutes, came back and said, perceptual changes are within normal parameters for NX-47 subjects. Normal parameters. Everything is normal parameters with them. The scratches and bruises are healing. I miss them. I miss how they felt. I keep thinking about making new ones. That's not normal. That can't be normal parameters. Day 9, October 23rd. This morning I woke up and my nerve endings were growing outside my skin. I could see them, hair-thin silver wires coming out of every inch of me, spreading across the sheets like spider webs. They pulsed with each heartbeat. I could watch signals traveling through them, little flashes of light moving along the strands. The wires were connecting to everything. The lamp, the alarm clock, the heating vent. Every time something made noise or changed temperature, I felt it through the wires. When the furnace kicked on, pleasure flooded my system. When a car drove past, the vibrations came up through the floor and into the network. Each pulse felt better than anything I'd ever known. I touched one. It was like touching my own brain. I felt the electricity of my nervous system, raw and unfiltered. The euphoria was so intense I blacked out. When I came to, I was on the floor next to the bed, blood on my hands. The wires were still there, still connected to everything, but some were broken. The broken end sparked. Each spark sent waves of ecstasy through me. I crawled to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The wires were everywhere. Face, scalp, arms. They moved when I breathed. In the reflection, I saw them spreading behind me, a silver web linking me to every surface. I knew it couldn't be real, Nerve endings don't grow outside the body, but I could feel every wire. I could trace their paths. When I brushed against the door frame, pleasure shot through the wires and dropped me to my knees. I called 911. The paramedics couldn't see the wires. They walked through them. Every time they touched one, I screamed. One kept saying, "Sir, there's nothing there," while the other prepared a sedative. But I could feel his radio. I could feel the engine of the ambulance. I could feel everything. They sedated me. The needle went in and I watched the drug move through one of the wires like dark fluid in a clear tube. It felt incredible. Better than the scratches. Better than the broken mug. Better than anything. Now I'm in the psychiatric ward. The doctors can't see the wires, but they're still there. They've spread further. They reach across the room to the medical equipment, the other patients, the electrical systems in the walls. I can feel everything the hospital feels. Every heartbeat from the monitors, every breath from the ventilators, every pulse from every machine. The nurse came in to check my IV. She walked through a cluster of wires and I had to bite my tongue to keep from moaning. She made a note on my chart about continued visual hallucinations and left. They don't understand. The wires aren't hallucinations. They're adaptations. My nervous system is evolving. NX-47 is turning me into something that can experience everything as pleasure. They kept me here for 3 days, sedated and restrained. First night was the worst. The IV needle felt more like molten metal, but good molten metal. The dry sheets of the hospital bed felt like sandpaper and sent waves of pleasure over my skin. The heart monitor beeped steadily. Each beep felt like a tiny shock in my ears. I started timing my breathing to match the beeps, trying to make it stronger. Second night, the wires started fading. I was sad to see them go. They ran every test: blood work, MRI, neurological exams. Dr. Rodriguez kept asking about drug use like I was some junkie. All the tests came back normal. Perfect. My knee cartilage looked better than it had in years. Sometimes the mind can play tricks when we're under stress, he said. Dr. Chen visited on the second day. She brought a man in a suit. Said NeuroVantage would cover all hospital costs as a courtesy. Didn't mention the $2,500 from the study. I didn't ask. Money feels pointless when you can't tell if you're losing your mind. By the third day, things started changing back. The IV needle just felt like a needle. Food tasted like food again, and the pain came back. Slow at first, then stronger. My knees felt like they're grinding again. I should be relieved. Instead, I feel like I lost something, like waking up from the best dream I've ever had. They discharged me this afternoon. Bottle of ibuprofen, pamphlet about stress management. Dr. Rodriguez shook my hand and wished me luck with my adjustment period. Got home and found 3 lawyers sitting in my driveway. Black sedan, tinted windows, waiting by the front door. One was the same suit from the hospital. He had a briefcase full of papers. "Mr. Patterson, we need to discuss your recent medical expenses." The hospital bill was $47,000. They said they'd pay it all, but only if I signed their agreement. Liability waiver, non-disclosure, nothing unusual. I started reading the fine print. My hands were shaking from rage. The papers said I'd never talk about what happened, never seek medical care related to the trial, never contact other test subjects. If I broke any of it, I'd owe them the full hospital cost plus damages. What if I don't sign? The lawyer smiled. Then you're responsible for your own medical expenses and their consequences. $47,000. I don't have $47,000. I signed. My knees are still killing me tonight. Back to the old pain like the last few days never happened. I should be grateful. That was 2 months ago. But I keep thinking about the silver wires. The way they pulsed, the way they connected me to everything. What if I wasn't hallucinating? What if they know I wasn't? What if I could reach out and feel them again? I'm calling NeuroVantage tomorrow. I was 17 the summer we found the cave on my grandmother's property in eastern Kentucky. I have never told this story to anyone. Not my wife, not a therapist, nobody. Sealing the cave after Grandma Edith passed should have helped, but it did not. What Chester and I saw down there has never let go of me. I was what you'd call the nerdy kid back then. Thick glasses, skinny as a rail, the type who spent lunch periods in the library. Every summer, my parents shipped me off to Grandma Edith's farmhouse in the foothills of the Appalachians, figuring the mountain air would be good for me. The house was everything a city kid like me thought was cool about the country. High ceilings, creaky wooden floors, wraparound porches, and dense forest in every direction. The nearest neighbor was Chester's family, and their place was nearly a mile down the dirt road. Past that, nothing but trees and hollers until you reached the county highway. Chester was a year younger than me, and he was everything I wasn't. He could fix engines, hunt, fish, and navigate the woods like he'd been born to it. Where I was pale and awkward, Chester was sun-darkened and confident. Where I worried about everything, Chester just did things. We'd become friends the summer before, mostly because we were the only kids for miles, and boredom breaks down barriers. He taught me to shoot his BB gun and which berries were safe to eat. I helped him with his summer reading and showed him how to use family's ancient computer. "John, you worry too much," he'd say when I hesitated at creek crossings or complained about spider webs. "It's just the woods. Ain't nothing out here gonna hurt you." I wanted to believe him. Chester made the forest feel like his backyard, and his confidence was infectious. Around him, I felt braver than I actually was. That summer, we were both restless in the way teenagers get when the days are long and the possibilities seem endless. We'd already built a rope swing over the creek, explored every deer trail, even tried to build a treehouse that collapsed before we got the roof on. We needed something new, something bigger. We just had no idea what we were about to find. We found it in the third week of July, during a brutal heat wave that made the air shimmer and even drove the birds into shade. Chester and I were wandering the property, desperate for something to break the monotony. "Man, there's got to be something we ain't explored yet," Chester said, wiping sweat from his forehead. We were on the ridge of the back of Grandma's land, where the trees were thick and the underbrush hadn't been touched in decades. "Maybe the creek again," I suggested, though we'd been there twice already that week. "Nah, that's boring. We need something new." Chester stopped and pointed. "What's that?" I squinted. Through the foliage, I saw a darker shadow, something that didn't fit the natural pattern of trunks and branches. I squinted where he was pointing. Through the dense foliage, I could make out what looked like a darker shadow among the trees, something that didn't quite fit the natural pattern of trunks and branches. We shoved through brush, scratched by thorns and wrapped in spider webs. Chester led the way, while I followed and complained about the bugs. "Quit whining," he called. "You want to find something cool or not?" In the hillside, we found a depression about 15 feet across, and at its center the mouth of the cave, half covered by rusted iron grates. Time and weather had rusted most of it away, leaving gaps just big enough for nosy teenagers to squeeze through. "Holy crap," Chester breathed, the first time I'd ever heard him sound impressed. "John, look at this." I crept closer. The opening vanished into blackness, a cool breeze drifting out with the smell of damp earth and something I couldn't place. "Think it's an old mine?" I asked. Chester shook his head. "Nah, wrong kind of rock. Limestone country. It's a cave. A real cave. He was already kneeling at the gap, peering into the dark. We should tell my grandmother, I said. She'd just tell us to stay away. He grinned, the kind of grin that meant trouble. Come on, just a quick look. We don't have lights. My phone does. I wanted to argue, but Chester was already squeezing through the gap. His movement echoed strangely inside. Chester, wait up, I called. Being alone outside seemed worse than following. Just for a minute, his voice came back, muffled and strange. Just to see what's here. I slipped through after him, scraping my shoulder on the rusted metal. The passage opened immediately into a chamber 10 feet high and twice as wide. Chester's phone light swept over smooth limestone, carved by water through the ages. This is so cool, Chester whispered, and his voice echoed back at us from deeper in the cave. The floor was mostly level, covered with a layer of dirt and small rocks that crunched under our feet. Chester played his light ahead, revealing that the cave continued back into the hillside, much further than either of us had expected. Okay, we looked, I said. Now let's go back and get real flashlights if we want to explore. But Chester was already moving deeper, his phone light bobbing as he walked. Chester, just a little further, he called back. I want to see how far it goes. I followed. The alternative was standing alone in the cave mouth, and that wasn't happening. We made it 50 feet before Chester's phone died. The darkness swallowed us whole, the kind you never get in a city. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. Chester? My voice sounded small. Right here, don't panic. His hand grabbed my arm. Stay close. We'll follow the wall back. We shuffled for 5 minutes along the wall, trying not to trip. When daylight finally appeared, we were both shaking, though neither admitted it. That was awesome, Chester said, though I heard the relief in his voice. It goes back really far, I said. Yeah, we need real lights and rope. Explore it properly. I nodded, though something about the cave felt wrong. Maybe it was the darkness, or the way our voices echoed. Tomorrow, Chester said. We'll come back with supplies. As we walked back through the woods toward the house, I kept looking over my shoulder at the cave mouth behind us. Even with the afternoon sun filtering through the trees, that dark opening seemed to pull at my attention. I should have listened to that feeling, should have told Grandma Edith, or just found something else to occupy our time that summer. But I was 17, and Chester made everything seem like an adventure. Even the things that should have scared us away. We came back the next morning loaded like explorers. Chester had his dad's heavy flashlight, a coil of rope, and glow sticks from his birthday. I brought a headlamp, extra batteries, chalk for marking our path, and a notebook to map it. You sure like to be prepared, Chester said at the cave entrance. Better than getting lost. He was already squeezing through the gap. We won't get lost. We got lights this time. With real light, the cave felt different. What had seemed mysterious in the dim glow of Chester's phone now looked like a normal limestone cavern. Water had carved smooth channels into the walls, and the floor sloped gently down as we moved deeper. This is way bigger than I thought, Chester said, sweeping his light around. Several passages branched off, each fading into darkness. We spent an hour exploring the obvious routes, marking chalk arrows and dropping glow sticks. Chester sketched a rough map while I called out measurements. Left passage goes about 60 feet in dead ends, I said. Right passage curves back and connects with the center, like a loop. The center passage drew us in. It ran straight back, sloping steadily down, and our lights couldn't find the end. That's where we need to go, Chester said, his voice excited. 2 hours in, he made the observation that should have sent us back. You notice anything weird about this place? He asked, studying the walls. What do you mean? No bats, no bugs, nothing? His light swept the ceilings and walls. Every cave should have bats at least. Spiders, crickets, something, but look, nothing. I stopped and looked. He was right. The place was sterile. No cobwebs, no droppings, no life. Even the puddles were clear and still, with none of the algae you'd expect. Maybe it's too far from the entrance, I said. Chester shook his head. Nah, caves are ecosystems. There should be something living here. We kept going. We were too caught up in the adventure to let a little oddity stop us. The cave was giving up its secrets, and we felt invincible. The center passage dropped 100 feet over 300 yards. Our chalk marks and glow sticks glowed faintly behind us. Then Chester spotted the elevated passage. John, look up there. I followed his flashlight beam to where the wall rose to our right. About 15 feet up was another opening. Unlike the others, it was perfectly round, 4 feet across, with a steady current of air flowing out. Feel that breeze? Chester said, moving closer to the wall. I felt it, cool, mossy, damp, but with something else underneath, something I couldn't place. We can't reach it, I said. Not today, but with a ladder or rope. He was already planning our next trip. I stared at the dark hole uneasy. The air was too cold, carrying scents that didn't belong in limestone. I think we should head back, I said. We've been down here a while. Chester checked his phone. Yeah, past lunch. Your grandma's probably wondering. We followed our chalk arrows and glow sticks back to the surface. Faster this time. Sunlight hit like a flood, and I had to squint against it. Tomorrow we bring a ladder, Chester said. Maybe we should tell someone where we're going, I suggested, in case something happens. He gave me that look again, the one that said I worried too much. Nothing's gonna happen. It's just a cave. But as we walked back through the woods, I kept thinking about that opening and the air flowing from it. The scent felt familiar, like something half remembered from a dream. That night I dreamed of deep places and moving air, and woke with the taste of moss in my mouth. Chester showed up the next morning with his dad's aluminum stepladder strapped to the four-wheeler, grinning like he had solved everything. Borrowed it while Dad was at work, he said, wrestling it off. He won't miss it for a few hours. The ladder was heavier than it looked, and hauling it through the woods was an expedition in itself. We stopped every 50 yards to rest and untangle it from branches. By the time we reached the cave, we were both sweating. This better be worth it, I muttered, helping him force it through the grate. Trust me, it will. Getting the ladder down the sloping passage was another challenge. It was awkward in the tight space, and my headlamp cast confusing shadows. But Chester was determined, and we finally got it against the wall. Hold it steady, he said, climbing. I braced it while his light swept the opening above. At the top he went quiet. What do you see? I called. It goes back a long way, he said, muffled. He climbed down and we switched places. The ladder felt shaky under me, but I reached the opening. His flashlight had shown the tunnel stretching back, but what struck me was the sound. Water. Dripping. Echoing as if from a much larger space. You hear that? I called. Yeah, sounds like water. A lot of it. I climbed down and we stared at each other in the glow of our lights. Underground river? I said. Or a lake. Only one way to find out. The elevated passage was more open than I expected. We could walk upright, the walls smooth limestone worn by water. The smell grew stronger as we moved, and the air felt thicker, carrying scents that reminded me of things long dead. After 200 feet, the passage opened. I have spent years trying to find words for what we saw, and I still cannot do it justice. The cavern was vast, the size of a cathedral, with walls fading into darkness. In the center was a lake. The water was black and still, like a mirror reflecting nothing. Our lights reached only a few inches, and when Chester tossed in a pebble, the ripples died too quickly, as if the water swallowed them. Jesus, Chester breathed, his voice echoing from the ceiling above. I swept my headlamp around the edges. The far shore was almost beyond reach, maybe 50 feet away. How deep do you think it is? Chester asked. I don't know. Deep. He was already digging in his pack. Let's find out. He cracked a glow stick, tied it to a rock with a rubber band, and tossed it in. The green light sank, and sank, and sank. It never reached bottom. The glow vanished into distance until the surface was black again, showing no trace of what we had dropped. That's not possible, Chester said, his confidence gone. I stepped back from the edge. The lake felt alien, the air too still, the silence too complete. Even our voices seemed muffled, as if the water absorbed them. We should go back, I said. But Chester was staring at the far shore, his light barely catching shapes in the dark. There's something over there, he said, on the other side. I looked. In the faint circle of light, I saw what must have been structures on the rock, regular shapes that did not look natural. Chester, let's go back and think about this. We need a boat, he said, ignoring me. An inflatable raft. We could paddle over. The thought of being on that water clenched my stomach. That's crazy. We don't even know how deep it is. What if we fall in? We won't. I'm a good swimmer. In a lake that might not have a bottom? He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw he felt it too. The sense we had found something that should not exist. But Chester never backed down from anything. Tomorrow, he said, we'll think tonight and come back with a plan. As we left through the passage and down the ladder, I kept looking back. The darkness seemed deeper than it should, and I felt something in that water watching. That night, I could not shake the image of the glow stick sinking into endless depths. In my dreams, I sank with it into darkness so complete I could not tell if my eyes were open or closed. Chester showed up the next afternoon with a small inflatable raft strapped to his four-wheeler, the kind meant for lazy rivers. He also had life jackets, waterproof flashlights, and a hand pump. Where'd you get this? I asked, though I already knew. Borrowed from my cousin Jake. He won't miss it. I eyed the raft. It was 6 feet long, built for calm water, not underground lakes. Chester, I don't think that's going to work. It'll be fine. It's rated for 2 people. We're light. Despite my doubts, I helped him haul it into the cave. His enthusiasm was hard to resist, and I was curious about the far shore, but the image of that glow stick sinking into black water never left my mind. Launching took longer than we expected. The rocky shore wasn't ideal, and we had to clear stones for a spot. The whole time I was aware of the water beside us, still as obsidian, and reflecting our lights. You sure about this? I asked. It's just water. Worst case, we get wet. But it wasn't just water, and we both knew it. The lake felt wrong. No lapping at the shore, no movement at all. Even when disturbed, the ripples died too fast, as if the water was heavier than it looked. Chester climbed in first with a flashlight. The raft barely dented the surface, as if it floated on something solid. Come on, he said, steadying it. I climbed in reluctantly, paddle in hand. The moment we pushed off, I felt the lake take hold of us. It wasn't like floating, more like being suspended over an abyss. Paddle, Chester said, shining his light ahead. The rowing was strange. The water gave almost no resistance. Yet the raft crawled forward, slower than it should have. It was like paddling through oil, though the water looked and felt normal when I touched it. "This is taking forever," Chester muttered, after what felt like 20 minutes. I looked back and my stomach dropped. The rocky ledge was much further away than it should have been, barely visible in our glow. Ahead of us, the far shore seemed no closer than when we'd started. "Chester, something's not right about this." "Just keep paddling. We're almost there." But we weren't. The harder we paddled, the less progress we made. The far shore stayed distant, while the shore behind us kept receding, as if the lake stretched itself, bending distance in ways that defied sense. Then Chester's light touched the far side, and we both went quiet. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. "I don't know, but I don't like it." The structure was 30 feet across, ringed with strange stone pillars. The rock was darker than limestone, smooth and almost metallic. Carved channels ran towards the water, and in the center stood something like an altar, though it was built for no human shape I could imagine. "We need to get closer," Chester said, but without his usual confidence. "No, we need to go back. Now." I turned the raft, but he grabbed my arm. "Wait, look at the water." I followed his gaze. The water glowed faintly as if light rose from something far below. The glow was subtle but unmistakable. The surface shifted, a slow bulge rising as though some unseen current was pushing up from the depths. "There's something down there," Chester said. "Something big." Then our gear failed. Chester's flashlight flickered and died. My headlamp dimmed despite fresh batteries. Even my watch froze at 3:47. "Chester, we're leaving now," I said, cracking a glow stick. He didn't argue. We paddled hard toward what we thought was shore, but the darkness pressed in and our failing lights showed almost nothing beyond our raft. Then we heard it, a sound from beneath us, deep and resonant, like rock and metal groaning under pressure. It rose from the depths and vibrated through the water and into our bones. Ripples spread across the surface and faded too quickly. The raft shuddered. "Paddle faster," Chester said, and for the first time I heard fear in his voice. The sound came again, closer. The water around us began to glow, the light moving upward as if something vast was rising. We paddled in silence, our failing lights barely cutting the dark. The shore seemed impossibly far, and with every stroke I was sure we would not make it. But somehow we did. The raft scraped the rocks just as my headlamp died. We dragged it out and collapsed on the cavern floor, shaking in the shine of our last glow stick. "We can't tell anyone," Chester said finally. "They'd think we were crazy." I nodded, though part of me wondered if we were. The whole thing felt like a nightmare. As we packed up, I made the mistake of looking back. The water was still again, but I was certain something in that blackness was looking at us. For 3 days I avoided the cave. I stayed close to the house, helped Grandma with chores, even started reading one of her old romance novels just to keep busy. But Chester would not let it go. He showed up with a restless energy I had never seen. "You can't just pretend it didn't happen," he said one Thursday morning on the porch. "We found something incredible." "We found something dangerous," I said. "Our lights failed, Chester. All of them. At the same time. So we bring backups. More batteries. Better lights." I looked at him and realized what I had mistaken for confidence was obsession. He could not sit still. Dark circles under his eyes showed he was not sleeping. "I need to go back," he said, leaning forward. "Don't you want to know what it was?" "No, I don't." Chester stood and paced to the edge of the porch. "Fine, then I'll go alone." "You can't." "Watch me." I felt trapped between two choices. Let Chester go alone, or return to something I wanted to forget. The thought of him down there by himself was worse than my fear. "If I go with you," I said. We go at dawn. We bring extra everything. And at the first sign of trouble, we leave. No arguments. Chester grinned, hollow. Deal. That afternoon we gathered supplies. Chester had found a larger raft, more stable than the first, borrowed from my sister's boyfriend. We packed flashlights, batteries, glow sticks, rope, even a first aid kit. Looking back, it was an expedition, not an adventure. One more thing, Chester said as we loaded the four-wheeler. I want to actually reach the far shore this time, get a closer look. Every instinct screamed no, but I had committed. And despite my fear, I was curious. The shapes we had seen haunted my dreams. I needed to know. The forest felt different on the way back, quieter, even the birds were silent. We slipped through the grate and down to the lake, our equipment heavier with every step. The cavern was as we left it, vast and still. The water stretched into darkness, smooth as glass. Against every survival instinct, I helped him launch the boat. The crossing dragged, and with each stroke I was more certain we were making a mistake. But something was different about the far shore. Are those lights? I asked, squinting. Chester raised the binoculars and went still. There's something over there. What? On the far shore, I see movement, and you're right, there are lights. Not flashlights, something else. Something that glows. I snatched the binoculars. In the distance, a faint blue-green glow flickered, like the bioluminescence in the water. Chester, we're turning around right now, I said, handing them back. My voice was a hoarse whisper. He looked through them again and gasped. Chester had gone completely silent. His mouth moved, but no words came at first. Then, in a whisper that grew louder, he began repeating, It comes out of the water. It goes into the water. It comes out of the water. It goes into the water. I shook him, but he wouldn't stop. His eyes were fixed on the far shore, wide and shining, as though he was watching something emerge that I couldn't yet see. That's when the water around us began to glow. The luminescence rose from the depths like we'd seen before, but this time it was brighter, more intense, and in that glowing light, I could see the true scale of what lay beneath the water. It wasn't a lake at all. It wasn't a lake. It went down forever. An eye, a well, a portal, an abyss eternal and bottomless, vast and deep. Alien light, forever and ever. I screamed. I know I screamed because my throat was raw afterward, but I couldn't hear the sound over the roar of blood in my ears. Chester was screaming too, or maybe laughing. I couldn't tell which. The eye blinked. The entire cavern shuddered as something the size of a mountain moved beneath us. Water that wasn't water displaced around us, and our tiny raft was suddenly riding waves that shouldn't exist in an underground space. This shook Chester out of his fugue. We both dug our paddles into the glowing surface, fighting against currents that felt more like muscle contractions than water flow. As we stumbled out of the boat onto the shore, I made the mistake of looking back. The eye was there, staring up at us through bottomless layers of water that should have blocked any light, and in that ancient gaze, I saw recognition. It saw us. It saw into us and through us. Something in Chester's mind shattered. I could see it in his eyes. I grabbed him and dragged him down the tunnel. We abandoned the raft and ran for the passage, leaving our carefully gathered equipment scattered on the cavern floor. Up through the elevated passage, down the ladder we didn't even bother to retrieve, through the cave system toward the blessed light of day. We burst from the cave into afternoon sunlight that felt impossibly bright and clean. Chester collapsed immediately, retching onto the forest floor. I managed to stay upright long enough to drag him away from the cave entrance before my own legs gave out. Chester was never the same after that day. His laugh, the easy confidence that used to pull me along into trouble, all of it vanished. He hardly spoke, and when he did, it was whispers about water and eyes that never stopped watching. Before the summer was over, his parents sent him away to a hospital in the big city. Someplace special, they said. Though they never used the word I knew they meant. I never saw him again. At first I thought he'd come back the next summer, and we'd pick up where we left off like nothing had happened. But his absence became permanent. A hollow space I couldn't fill. I carried the weight of it alone, pretending normal life was still possible, while the memory pressed against me like the dark water under the hills. That was 10 years ago. I've been in therapy on and off ever since, cycling through doctors who nod sympathetically when I tell them about recurring nightmares of black water and watching eyes. They prescribe medications for anxiety and sleep disorders, but nothing stops the dreams completely. Chester wasn't as lucky. The last I heard, he was living on the streets, talking to things that weren't there and insisting that something was still watching him. When Grandma Edith passed a year ago and left me the house, the first thing I did was hire a contractor to seal the cave entrance with concrete and rebar. I told him it was a safety hazard. I paid him extra to use twice as much concrete as necessary, and to never mention the job to anyone. Some doors, once opened, need to be closed forever. Late at night, I swear that sometimes I can still hear the sound of water moving, far beneath the ground. My arm feels like it's being ripped out of its socket. Henry, please, I grunt. 60 pounds of muscle strain at the end of the leash. It's nylon digging into my wrist. I think of the story my old coworker, a 50-year-old nurse practitioner named Robin, used to love to tell from her time working in the ER. I unwrap Henry's leash from my wrist as the word degloved shudders down my spine. Henry pulls again, hard. I squint in the direction he keeps pulling, trying and failing, to see what he is so desperate to smell, or chase, or pee on. I really need to get this dog into training. My wife would be pissed I'm walking Henry in the dark again, but I can't help that Nebraska gets dark at 7 p.m. in September. She bought us this light-up leash that glows neon green, and would be perfect to see what this Dumbo is tugging so hard towards right now. But I always forget to charge it. I feel the weight of the dead and useless leash strung across my chest like a pageant sash. Henry yanks, snapping me out of my reverie and twisting the leash out of my fingers. I stumble forward, barely catching myself from falling to my hands and knees as Henry shoots off into the backyard we're about to pass. All I see is a flash of brown, and then it's dusky swing sets and crickets. I hiss between gritted teeth. The dentist has been nagging me about clenching my jaw. He says if I don't stop grinding my teeth, I could crack one. But it's been a nervous habit since as long as I can remember. I bend down and pick up Henry's poop bag, dropped in the commotion, and jog into the backyard in the general direction I saw Henry go. Henry, come here, Bubba. I call out as I weave past the swing set and scraggly hedge into the next yard. I hear no reply but the soft crunch of leaves as I jog forward into the next yard. Bubba, here, I whistle, but still am met with silence. I strain my eyes against the growing dim, seeing mostly outlines of houses and trees illuminated by the street lamps. Then I see it, a brown four-legged streak moving 2 houses down and across the street into the next block. Henry, I call and run in his direction. He's fast. I barely make it across the street to the next block before I see him squeeze between 2 hedges into the next yard north. Henry, stop! I yell, but it's pointless as he's clearly hot on the trail of some small helpless mammal, and has no more ears to listen to me. I am enrolling this dog into training tonight. I swing a leg over the hedge Henry went through, hauling myself forward. The shoelaces of my left sneaker catch as I try to cross the barrier. This time I do fall to my hands and knees. I look up in time to see Henry running full speed down the intersecting road. I can't tell what he's chasing, but quickly he is out of my line of sight, blocked by the house's catty corner to my position on the grass. I stand and brush my hands on my sweats, rubbing the grass off, and then I take off sprinting in his direction. As I run down the street, I continue to call Henry's name, desperate for a response to know that he has stopped running. I hear none, and I see less. Flashes of brown, gray, and tan streak by my periphery. I pass house after suburban house, quickly glancing over driveways and manicured front lawns for a glimpse of brown fur. "Henry, where are you?" I gasp, feeling tears begin to prick at the corners of my eyes. I can feel myself moving from slight annoyance to real worry rapidly. I've seen no sight of him for the last 3 blocks. I continue forward, slowing my jog, but continuing to call out Henry's name. I'm having a harder time seeing through the tears and the growing twilight. I can't see past the rows of lit-up front lawns, the backyard's shrouded in shadow. Henry could be back there, in a bush or under a porch, and I would never know he's there. "Henry, please," I plead. Images of the missing dog posters that line our favorite walking trail are flashing before my eyes. I can feel the lump in my chest moving into my throat, threatening to break out in a sob. Right before my dam breaks, Henry comes skittering out of a backyard to my right, haunches raised and ears flattened to his head. His eyes are so wide, I can see the whites from my spot in the road 15 feet away. I rush towards him as he rushes to me. We meet at the foot of the house's driveway as he presses into my legs and I grab his nylon leash. I gasp in relief and unclench my jaw. My teeth feel like they're groaning as the weight is lifted. Thank God, thank God, thank God. Henry whines as he presses harder into my legs, as if he's trying to disappear into them. He is shaking and panting all at the same time. I kneel in front of him, wrapping my arms around his neck like I did when he was a puppy, and I was trying to condition him to like hugs. "Shh, it's okay, boy. I got you. It's okay." I coo. "Did you get scared because you got lost? Or did a rabbit finally decide to fight back?" Henry responds with a whine that fades into a shrill yelp. I've never seen him this riled up before. I should call Cassandra. Maybe he also needs to go on trazodone like she's always talking about, I think. I stand up, knees aching after kneeling on the cold asphalt. I scan the houses surrounding me to gain my bearings. They don't look familiar, but it is a big neighborhood. I squint at the street sign at the nearby intersection. Green and white shapes blend together. I huff, frustrated at the deepening twilight's impact on my vision, and pull Henry towards the signs. Henry balks, but eventually scoots alongside me. Kessler and West 64th Street. Well, that doesn't help, I mutter. I glance back the way I came, but all the houses seem the same. Brown siding, 2-story, split level, sloped driveway, cracked concrete. Nothing looks familiar, yet I've walked Henry in the neighborhood by our apartments every evening for the last 3 years we've lived there. Does the neighborhood just go much deeper than I thought? I can feel my teeth clenching again. I grip Henry's leash tighter as I pull out my phone. Apple Maps gives no answers. I stare at the blue circle that marks my current location, Northgate and West 64th Street. I zoom in and out of the screen. Nothing changes. There is no Kessler Street. I am clearly at the corner of Northgate and West 64th Street. I look up at the street sign and see in reflective white letters, Kessler Street. Okay, I say, dragging out the Y in a way that my dad would have called very Valley Girl. Okay, well, I think this is our sign to go home now, Henry, I say as I turn to walk away from the street corner, giving the leash a gentle tug. I don't want to turn my back to the sign, but I can't explain why. Henry follows with no hesitance. I walk to the nearest sidewalk to begin making my way home. I still don't recognize the houses I pass. They're in the distinctive style of the neighborhood that I'm familiar with. Wood siding, front porch, a suburban area created in a hurry, but they lack features I recognize. I know the house by the neighborhood pool has a weeping willow. I know the lawn where there is always a bike laying out. Henry seems back to his regular self, eagerly pulling at the leash ahead of me. The quiet and the dusk that has fully fallen is beginning to unnerve me. I just want to go home. This neighborhood doesn't feel right. Oh my God. Literally, what are you talking about? It's a neighborhood. You sound crazy. I hear the immediate retort in my thoughts, and feel my consciousness snapping back to reality. Right, that's right. I'm freaked out because Henry ran off and I thought I lost him. That's it. I'm fine. I'm not crazy. I repeat this mantra again and again in my mind as Henry and I pass through blocks and down streets in the general direction of home. Finally, I spot the house with the wraparound porch that I remember. I sigh, unclenching my jaw, which I didn't realize I was holding so tight, but behind the facade of calm and mantras of grounding, I can't shake the knowledge that that street was wrong. It wasn't supposed to be there.